what got you into the business to start with, and when did you first start managing, and a little background on that?
Yeah, sure. So I started in this industry 35 years ago, built my first building in Rancho Mirage, California. Started with a company called MBK, which is kind of a leader in senior living. At the time, it was Mitsui Corporation that owned MBK. It was MBK Housing and MBK Senior. And that was my kind of break into the senior living world. I started there as a marketer, and I pre-marketed the building to a pretty significant fill rate. So they asked me to be the executive director, and I didn't know anything about being an executive director, and I had a fresh MBA from Pepperdine out of my pocket, so I figured I could do anything. So they dragged me across the hallway to Horizon Bay with the new company spinning off from Senior Lifestyle. I worked for them as their corporate executive director for many years. My job was not only investing and divesting, but also troubleshooting. And so I would go into buildings where they were challenged. I would spend the week. I would analyze what the problems were, what was fixable, whether it was a staff change that needed to happen or whether it was culture change that needed to happen. And then I would implement the change, and I would stay in the building to make sure that I saw it through the process. I left them and I went to work for Jerry Irwin and Associates, JEA Senior Living. They were at the time building standalone memory care, 66-bed standalone memory care. And I wanted to get a little bit more on the development side than I had been on the operations side. And so I came in as vice president of environmental operations for JEA. And over the course of my, 7-8 years with them, I developed and saw the construction of 16 standalone 66-bed memory care facilities. Interestingly enough, Evans, Georgia was one of those 16. So I'm intimately familiar with the land, with the building, with its location, the market need, and the physical plant building itself. But that started the relationship between Dr. McGlade and I, and we decided to take my management company and his management company and merge them. And we kept the Ridgeline side of that because Ridgeline's been around for 28 years and had a pretty significant name in the industry. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of my from college to today. But that's what got me to where I am. And we now currently own 7 of those standalone memory care buildings that I helped to construct during the time I was with JEA.
So how many properties and how many beds is that total that you currently manage?
So it's 30 properties. I couldn't tell you the bed count off the top of my head, Jim. Sorry. I think it's about 3,000 beds total. So we don't just do standalone memory care. We have independent living. We have a pretty good, significant amount of our business is assisted living, and then we have the standalone memory care.
So then your thoughts on Marshall Pines?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned,
familiar with that building before, or what was your?
I was on the ground the day we decided to buy the dirt at Marshall Pines, okay. And then I hired the superintendent who was there every day during the construction, and I did the final walks on that building when it was approved and got its C of O. So I do know the building well. I do know the market well. Obviously, it's a strong market. It's a subset of Augusta. So the money's there, the demographics are there, the age group is there. There is good competition in that market space, but I don't know that any of the competition is doing it well. And I mean, as illustrated by the fact that from the previous operator of that building to receivership, even the bank was outperforming the previous operator, right? So I don't think you have to do much to outperform the bank. So I think having our years, and by the way, my COO, Ben Tregathon, also worked for JEA as an executive director running a 66-bed memory care. So we're both very, very familiar with that model and how to make that model work. And this building is a great, honestly, of the, 15 or 20 buildings that I participated in the development of, if you asked me to pick 3 of those that I would want to have in my portfolio, this is one that I would pick.
Okay. And so what do you think the bank is doing wrong, or the current operator?
You know that building opened and filled fairly quickly and has been pretty successful through the time. The reason that it ended up in receivership is that building ended up with sunshine senior living, there was a split with JEA and Sunshine. Sunshine owned some of the buildings. That was one of the buildings that was part of the split. All of their buildings are really West Coast. Their offices are in Eugene, Oregon, and they didn't really want to be east of the Mississippi. So they just didn't give focus to their buildings that were east of the Mississippi. And I think when his loan came due, he ended up just walking away from it. So it wasn't because it wasn't financially viable. I think that building probably did better than some of the other buildings they had in the region. They just let them all go. So it wasn't just about Augusta or about Evans. It was about all the buildings in that geographic area.
Okay. And so you think sort of in the first year, some adjustment to the rents, and with better marketing, you'd start filling it up a little more?
Well, interestingly, I think one of the things that the bank's been afraid to do is raise rates. Usually non-operators are always afraid to raise rates, right? However, we've seen, I mean, I did 16 to 18% rate increases in my buildings last year, and we'll probably do 11 to 16% in the buildings this year. It's the only way that you can keep up with inflation and the rising cost of everything. So, and actually, even with those numbers as big as they sound, they haven't really kept up even with the cost of inflation. So this building particularly, I think it's been at least 2 years looking at their financials since they've done any kind of significant rate increases. So we would start with that. Obviously, you have to also deliver the care, right? So I think the other thing that we'll be able to do is to implement some policies around how we deliver care and how we love residents, and how we take care of those who have special Alzheimer's or dementia needs. Implement that, and then they're getting actual value for the rate increases. It's not just a new company coming in with rate increases. And then again, to your point, being in the market space, having recognition in the market space, having the right person out there being your representative in the market space, that's really usually what sets us apart. A good example of that, the building that we took on in Beaver Creek, Ohio, they were at, I think, 65% occupancy when we brought them on. It's full today. They run about 97% occupancy because there's always some deaths. But that was really about stabilizing the staff. They had 170% staff turnover when we took the building over. I think we're down to about 60% staff turnover, which is amazing for the assisted living industry.
Yeah, right. John, yeah, we can talk about a couple of successes that you sent us the information on in a minute, but nobody has 100% success. So what would be something that didn't work out, and why do you think it didn't work out?
To answer your question, the one failure that I've had to really learn from is being able to evolve with the industry as it grows and changes. But we're supremely focused on it now. It's a very interesting challenge because we also now have this technology side with AI and all this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, 4 or 5 years ago, I was shying away from all of that. These residents at 80 want a hands-on approach. They want somebody that's going to be there for them. They don't want an iPad or a cell phone. But as we get into this baby boomer generation, that is changing, and how we capture leads on the internet through AI is changing. And so, and sorry, that was a long way around your question, but that would be what I would say, was my biggest challenge or failure in recognizing the shifting winds.
Okay, and you sent us some information on a couple of them that worked out pretty well, or currently you're working on, and Vern's going to call those up and then share the screen. So maybe a short summary of how those you started and they were losing money and now they're making a little bit or something.
Yeah, the Ridgett Blaine, a good example. It was a building that was not doing well when we came in. Definitely struggling with census and reputation and keeping up with expense control. So there, I think, well, actually, probably both of these buildings. The story, the focus always was around expense control, creating pathways for increased revenue, and then creating culture and teaching the employees how to extend that culture to the residents. None of this part of that is rocket science, right? Expense control and creating revenue, but it all comes out of fine tuning the operations to be able to get to that point.
And where was these two properties located?
So these are both in Ohio. No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Blaine, Minnesota. The first one's Blaine, Minnesota. The second one's in Ohio.
Okay.
Both 66-bed standalone memory care. These are both buildings that were former JEA buildings.
These are the market rates that you found, for the property that we're interested in Georgia. So, do you think the one property was 6,500 and Marshall Pines is about 5,750. So the other two properties were, above that by $500 or so.
So the good news here is we don't have a long ways to go to be on the top of that revenue cycle. I think that their market rates have been slowly coming up. Interestingly enough, I think, believe it or not, the bank's been doing that, but they've been doing it with increased occupancy at their standard rates. So I think that it'll be fairly easy to implement value for the dollar and be able to then create the revenue pathway. The other thing that's a little misleading about market rates, I just want to touch on a bit. In memory care, you have all inclusive and you have a point system on how you care. So it's a little bit more difficult to compare just a market rate to a market rate until you understand whether that's a point system or a flat rate. We don't do the flat rate. We have tiers, and so we can generate the additional income from care charges and fairly easily more than close that gap between the 5,750 and the 6,500 in the care charge cycle.
All right. Well, I think that's all we wanted, and I hope everybody that watches it finds this useful. And if we have some more questions, we'll give you a call.
Yep, I'm available anytime. Just let me know.